Hello, I'm back again and I'm going to catch up on my videos. Uh, took me 5 days to post the last one. I don't want to get that behind anymore. I'd like to grind them out pretty regularly, as much as regularly as possible. Um, but anyway, I'm going to try to create a little backlog and do a few today. Probably talk about a whole wide variety of things, maybe not all related, more tangents than usual, perhaps, but I'll eventually get to some kind of point, I hope, by the time the video's over anyway, like an hour later. This first one, I'm just going to talk in general. This is kind of an arbitrary interlude. Um, and basically where I've been at up here and corporeally, temporally as well. I am back to work in the retail environment, dealing with the public. That was something I really was not going to be able to do much longer if I didn't take the leave that I took in December. So I took 3 weeks, solid 3 weeks of quarantining with a few stops to mail eBay orders and get groceries. And beyond that, it was just me and this house. So, and my cat, he's around somewhere. Um, so I went back to work, and after 2 days, it wasn't too bad. The day job work, I mean. My eBay job, the work has slowed way down. It's just started picking up here in the last few days pretty nicely. And I just mailed a ton of things out today, a few $100s worth of items that I'm mailing out to their soon to be proud new owners, including, I guess my biggest haul was my, well, yeah, two really. Uh, One was my collection of 4 Akira action figures made by McFarlane. These were made about 20 years ago. They did a whole little anime subset back when they were doing the movie Maniacs and the Spawn and all the other series they were doing before they kind of somehow settled into this bizarre niche of sports figures, and now they're doing DC's action figures for them. But regardless, McFarlane is like they changed the game on action figures and their whole sculpting approach. I mean, it kind of they weren't always as posable. They were kind of like statuettes with some posability. The best of them kind of combined the two. Um, the DC figures that I've collected from the 1990s and early 2000s, of which I have quite a lot. I have a whole Justice Society of America collection, which took me a while to assemble. Only missing a couple of pieces at this point. Those are really nice figures that kind of set the stage, the standard, I guess, for the comic book superhero figures. Marvel was off doing these insanely exaggerated, distorted looking figures, which was kind of reflecting their 1990s, the image era, I call it, of artists like McFarlane and Lee Field and etc. DC stuff was pretty much well done, realistic, 3-dimensional, while still interesting looking, accurate, a lot of posability, articulation. Now Marvel Legends is finally doing figures like those DC figures. So I have a small handful of the Marvel Legends ones because they're made just like the DC figures. They even have articulation in the exact same places. They're the same size. Someday I'll go over all that, action figures and such collecting, I guess. Just one other thing that I do. I haven't been able to afford to collect anything in a long time, and that action figures are kind of a luxury I afford myself only once in a while. And now I am selling a good bit of my backlog of figures. I even have one right here. She hasn't sold yet. This is a Big Barda. Sans helmet, her big, awesome helmet, I lost in a move or something. Anyway, this is a really nice figure. It's more proportionate than the other one I have. I kept one of her, which she's a little on the skinny side and the short side to be Big Barda, but she does have the helmet and she does have a really nice detailed costume. So this is what I'm letting go of. If it had the helmet, I might keep it, but it's not very articulated. I mean, you can't move the legs or anything, just the arms. This came in a little set with Mr. Miracle. It had Mr. Miracle, her wonderful husband, Scott-Free, and their little buddy Oberon. And Oberon's really just like a little figurine. He really doesn't move at all. The Mr. Miracle figure is I've held on to. It's pretty nice, and it goes with this theme I have of the Brave and the Bold, where I have Batman, a kind of 70s looking Batman, Jim Aparo, Neil Adams looking Batman, with a whole legion of his guest stars from the comics. So I actually created a Brave and the Bold little subset to my collection, and that Mr. Miracle fits in there. I also have a Mr. Miracle New Gods figure in the Jack Kirby style. I'm keeping him too, but he doesn't figure as well into that in with those other figures stylistically. Anyway, I'm trying to get rid of Big Bart. If you want to get it for $12, hit me up. I might do 10, but I'm selling a bunch more. I let go of the Akiras. I had 4, as I was saying, from the movie Akira. They're all nice. They only made 5 different character figures, and actually 2 of them are figures of the same character, Kaneda. One standing with his gun and one on his motorcycle. The motorcycle is really beautiful. And they also had an Akira, the kid Akira, as he looks human, as a human child, in his giant throne, which has all these tubings and electrical wires and kind of neon lights saying Akira. It doesn't really light up though. And then they also did one of Tetsuo, which is the nominal antagonist, I guess, of the movie Akira, and they have him with his cybernetic arm. And then they have him with an arm you can attach instead, which is this long, distended, kind of goopy pseudopod-ridden mass, which he starts to shoot out, in the movie once his real armor has been torn off. I like him best with the pseudopod arm. It also helps him stand up. So I got rid of all of those for a good amount, and I also finally sold Marvel Premiere number 15. Sad to part with this. This was the first appearance of Iron Fist, and overall, a superb story by Roy Thomas with art by Gil Kane. They co-created it, and Dick Giordano, who didn't do a lot of work for Marvel back then or at all, did the inks. It was one book I never got signed by Roy Thomas, and I always meant to. I have a number of his signed, and I've sold a few recently. He doesn't live terribly far from me, so I used to hit him up at Heroes conventions every year. But that first Iron Fist story really was powerful to me when I was a little munchkin, and it retains his power. Kane's artwork is pretty amazing and transcendent. I'm not sure how much Kane, much less Roy Thomas, really knew about real kung fu or martial arts. Probably not a lot, but it's to Kane's credit that he was able to make it viable, very kinetic, and I don't know. And then the tragic origin with the kid losing his parents, wolves eating his mom. I mean, what I never understood is that comic book, as Roy says in several accounts, and as he's told me personally, that comic book is based on, well, is inspired by King Boxer, also known as Five Fingers of Death, which is the first really popular kung fu film in the West before Bruce Lee broke with like Big Boss and those. And in Asia, there had already been a burgeoning movement with the Shaw Brothers, especially One-Armed Swordsman, 1967 was one of the very first ones, first really big hit, commercial hit Shaw Brothers. And then, of course, King Hu did a number of wuxia movies, which are classics, which also did pretty well. But Shaw Brothers became kind of bankable around the time King Boxer is kind of an export. I think that was 1971, I believe, or 72 when it came out, perhaps. It was before Bruce Lee films had been released over here, and before they made Enter the Dragon, which was made in 73. And of course, Lee died while the film was in post production before it even premiered. So it had kind of a built in mystique that still survives with his young death, premature death. But Roy said that, the Five Fingers of Death, especially with the Iron Fist ritual, where the guy's like toughening up his hands and his hands glow, took that directly and threw it into Iron Fist. And of course, instead of an Asian character like Shang-Chi, who came first, he is like a blonde white kid from America and with wealth on top of that. So, that's problematic for a lot of people nowadays. I think there was a way to make it work on TV. I'm going really far off field here, but I don't really have a field that I'm working on, so bear with me. I'm just kind of wherever my mind takes me. The Iron Fist show should have taken more cues from Five Fingers of Death and the Shaw Brothers films of that period. There should have been training sequences in Kunlun that were similar to the ones in, say, 36th Chamber of Shaolin. I mean, some of the early ones done by Larry Hama, he was kind of, I think he was familiar with the martial arts, and he was kind of emulating some of those scenes. He took over the art after Kane. And so the first few issues of Marvel Premiere 15, 16, 17, where they have his origin in multiple parts, and they start showing his training in Kunlun, because that series was always in the beginning largely powered by flashbacks, because the narration was third person. So it was always like, you are Iron Fist, and then it talks about you did this, and he's in the present day fighting some foe. His mind is flashing back, and he's, all these hardships he went through as a kid and being forged into a living weapon in Kunlun, embracing Shaolu, the undying dragon. The gist of all that is in the TV series, the Netflix TV series with Finn Jones as Iron Fist, Danny Rand, but the style is not there. I mean, even his fighting style is more fisticuffs. There's hardly any kicks, definitely not any jumps or leaps. Whereas the actress who plays Colleen Wing is fantastic, and you can tell she actually can fight and has really studied. And she's really Asian. You're Asian, and they did a wise thing in season 2 by making her the Iron Fist and letting her take over the series and pushing kind of Danny to the background. I really would have been okay if they killed Danny, but kept Tom Pelphrey as his buddy Ward, because that guy is a great actor. He wasn't well served in season 1, but he's fantastic in season 2. But Colleen Wing, I think she could have carried a third season, especially if they did the Daughters of the Dragon arcs with her and Misty Knight fighting together. They could have just changed the name to Daughters of the Dragon. That would have been great, and they could just forgot about Iron Fist. She could still have the power of the Iron Fist. So yeah, Iron Fist series was enjoyable to watch while I was watching it, but a lot of it is problematic, not necessarily for political incorrectness of having this kind of white savior figure awkwardly posited as the champion of a lost country of mostly Asiatic-looking people. But it's really just that they changed too much of the origin. They went right to the source material. This comic book I just sold, Marvel Premiere 15, is really the blueprint for the first few episodes and parts of later episodes, flashbacks. But they changed the circumstances of why his family was in Kunlun in the first place. They changed the circumstances of his parents' deaths. They kept the idea that Harold Mitchum was responsible for the death, and that kind of power play, taking over the company, getting the guy killed off in Kunlun. Of course, Meacham did not know in the comics. Meacham did not know that Wendell Rand had actually lived in Kunlun before and was like his son Danny later, an adopted uh, member of the Kunlun community. That was something we found out later on as the series went on. In the beginning, you just have him exploring with his wife and kid, and Harold, and he's out there in the ice with his little kid. I mean, what the hell? Um, but the idea I think was that he was obsessed with getting to this mystic place. You just didn't know back then that he'd actually been there before exactly. I guess there could be hints that he was, um, but Iron Fist eventually, goes through the whole vengeance thing, and he's very dogged. The first few issues, he's very concentrated on his goals. That part is kind of like the Kung Fu series of the time, where vengeance was also often a huge motivator for these characters. Either like their master was killed or their family member was killed. Um, Sometimes they themselves were wronged and damaged in some way, but vengeance for honor is really kind of what motivated a lot of the Shaw Brothers heroes. And Danny Rand followed in that lineage. Um, so he finally did exact revenge on Harold Meacham and all that, and then the series kind of went into another direction with Claremont Byrne taking over. But yeah, the TV series though should have really taken a lot more of its flavor from the classic kung fu films and just updated them, Americanized them, whatever they needed to do. But they should have definitely kept the fighting flavor and the vengeance angle, the powerful, more emotional angle, and had that be more important than the corporate intrigue angle, like soap opera element, which I thought was well done for what it was within that show. It made the series a little different than Luke Cage, Daredevil, of course Jessica Jones. None of those characters grew up rich though, so they never had to deal with any of that stuff. This one was kind of echoing like Dynasty Dallas kind of intrigue, nighttime soaps, and that worked okay. But it got fuzzy. By season 2, it's like, what kind of show is this going to be? And when they finally decided that, okay, it's going to be Colleen's show, that was gratifying. I think they actually were making a comment on the fact that they, meaning the showrunners, they knew that they'd miscast Danny Rand and that they'd mishandled him in the writing. And so they kind of capitalized on the weaknesses of that character and that actor rather than the lacking strengths he was lacking. But they capitalized on his weaknesses to make story points and to eventually shift the focus onto Colleen Wing and have Danny kind of fall from his appointed perch as the immortal Iron Fist. I thought that was brilliant. Not every episode warranted that kind of a twist. I mean, they could have been better done as an episodic show, but I did like season 2 a lot better than 1, and I'm glad they went in that direction because that's all they could do since they'd kind of screwed up actually straight out adapting the original stories. Whether he wore the costume or not, I mean, they finally kind of justified the yellow, mask tied behind his head. They finally justified that in season 2. They sneaked it in, but it's really more like homage or fan service than really anything serious. I didn't expect he would wear a yellow mask like that, but you never know. He could have had some kind of variant on his costume. As it is, they did have him wearing green all the time, and they did have him with the dragon tattoo. And to their credit, they never actually show Lao the undying dragon. He discusses facing him and defeating him, and you know, being branded, and the heart of the dragon, going into him. But they never show this. They show a lot of other conflicts on his way to obtaining the Iron Fist, but they never show that. In a way, that's kind of cool because whenever he tells a character, none of them believe him. Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, they all think he's a nut, and we know it really happened. But since they don't show it to us, it gives that kind of plausible deniability. Is that the right way to put it? I'm not sure. But there's also always a possibility that it didn't happen literally as Danny is describing it and as we saw in the comic books. So I think by leaving it open-ended, that was one of the better, smarter touches they put to the series. Anyway, sorry to get on this whole Netflix Iron Fist show thing, but I'm mourning the passing of my Marvel Premiere number 15. It went for a pretty large amount of money, though not nearly as much as I'd originally wanted to get from it. And I'm learning that's kind of the way of things on eBay. But anyway, so the eBay store's picking up a little bit. I am back at the day job. I'm not going to be working as many hours as I was previously. And I really needed to still take a little more personal time this week to myself. So I'll be back working tomorrow for the next several days in a row, but I wanted to knock out some videos while I still had some free time and a little bit of energy. And I've gotten some of my errands, like the eBay orders, out of the way. So essentially, I'm just rambling. My mind has been all over the place. I've still been in that kind of recovery mode. I've still been trying to deal with the same stuff I was dealing with a week or two ago. I'm doing a little better dealing with it. I'm trying some different approaches to dealing with it. A lot of it has just involved me forcing myself to keep going and trying to distract myself somehow from thinking about all the pain I felt from these reopened wounds regarding my ex fiance. I still miss her horribly, and I did not get a response to my videos, and that's fine. I don't expect one. I mean, I really wish I would get one. It's literally maddening, but it's not going to happen. So I'm trying to face reality. I don't feel like I have enough people in my corner telling me, give it up. This isn't going to happen. I mean, one friend of mine has exerted tough love towards me in this area, but almost to the point where he doesn't even want to hear me talking about her anymore, much less still having feelings for her, etc. It's been a little tough, and I haven't had a therapist who's been understanding as I wanted him to be. He's a good guy. I like him, in case he's watching this. But I need to go deeper, and I need someone who's going to indulge my ability to talk out all these feelings I have, which are still kind of, very real and vibrant to me. And the fact that I feel so much for and about this individual and things that have been shared between us and happened between us, and that individual, based on the evidence or lack of, doesn't remotely reciprocate those feelings. It's troubling. I'm trying not to let it be troubling. I'm trying to face reality. But as I kind of said on some of my other videos, both the soul-bearing type on here and also the ones to her directly, I had never really had that kind of fulfillment that I had with her on all these multiple levels. Everything felt right. It's easy to make it more complex than it is because she and I are both very complex, overthinking, kind of overfeeling kind of people. I don't know if it comes with the creativity or the madness or the I don't know. I don't know what it comes with, but it's all part of who we are. Though who she is now on the surface appears to be the same person, but I know inside is not, because I no longer figure into her plans or her goals or objectives. Someone like me is not um, welcome in her reality anymore, and that's tough. That's tough to accept after being told so many things and promised so many things, almost to the point of the actual marital vows being exchanged. We were going to write our own marital vows, which of course, made sense. We're both writers, both passionate, but you know, I don't know. I'm still not sure what went wrong. I could go on and on forever about it, and that's the problem. Is I'm trying to get off of this loop, this kind of endless, um, exhausting mind loop that I'm in. Um, I feel like I have respite and reprieve from it for periods of time, um, but it seems kind of omnipresent. So I am doing better. I'm getting out more. I'm working more. Uh, I'm writing more on Flickr Street. I'm doing more creative stuff, but I've always been able to do Flickr Street. Well, in this portion of my life, in the olden days when I would get depressed, a lot of times I would not be able to do Flickr Street unless it was a storyline based directly on what I was exactly feeling in that moment. I no longer need to do it that way. It's been tempting to confront loss I've had in a storyline, and I even laid the groundwork, character work for it, and then I abandoned it because it was still too soon, too fresh, a wound for me to try to exorcise. Um, it was really, and it still is. Uh, I still have a series of drawings planned based around my ex fiance. I want to capture her beauty and the things she shared with me of her physical being, and um, celebrate that and use that as a way of a catharsis. Unfortunately, it's still so painful. I can I can pick up a pencil and I can look at her picture. I can start, but I can't get where my mind is telling me to go, and where my craft. I want to apply my craft and have it come out the way I envision, or at least as good as that, if not the same. So it's going to be a while before I do that, much less put any of it into a storyline in Flickr Street. I feel like just about everything in my life has ended up becoming a storyline in Flickr Street, in some form or another, through that kind of analogical mirror refracted. Um, but this one's hard. This one's hard. It's hard to find circumstances in my story that would be conducive to such a tale as our love affair. So um, I'm still working out in the story. I mean, in my mind, I've already worked them out, but within the story, I'm still going through repercussions of other affairs I've had, uh, fictionalized as events happening to my characters. I have certain characters that are kind of alter egos of myself, parts of myself, and various of them have had relationships similar to ones I've had that have made a big impact on me. And those kind of stories have been very cathartic. My marriage and divorce inspired one that I thought was particularly uh, useful in that way. Um, but when you're flying blind like I am on this whole matter, not knowing this other person's emotions anymore, not having any access to their thought processes, even in cordial, casual, caring way, just you know, complete silence, complete ghosting. there's really not much to work with. You can't really draw a conclusion upon which to base a story that will have any kind of satisfying finale, much less grow into something else. Um, my current story, my big love story in the Ellinger arc of Flicker Street is between his character Simon Boom and his character Frankie Lynn Tudrow, and their affair was inspired in large part by my dealings with uh, my serious girlfriend that I had before I met my ex fiance. I mean, uh, she and I had finally come to a peace of sorts a little bit before I met my ex fiance, so that was good. I was not wrapped up in something else. Whereas if now, if someone met me or I met someone, it would be inescapable, at least for a while. The weight that my most recent ex would have upon me, and I've made a couple of half-hearted attempts to flirt or to get involved on some level with a couple of people I met online in the last year and a half, but it's never progressed beyond. It gets to a certain point, and I realize this isn't her. This isn't who I want to be with. I know who I want to be with. I made my choice. Now I have to get to the point where I unmake that choice, I guess, undo that. I'm listening to Alice Coltrane. I think it's a compilation album on YouTube in the background. So if you hear this cool harp music or drum solos or pianos, that's Alice Coltrane playing with a variety of people like Rashid Ali and I believe Pharoah Sanders. After John Coltrane died, uh, Pharoah and Rashid and Alice, who had been in his last band, they kind of stayed together under Alice's leadership. So here I go into music. Um, I do want to do another music video, and I've been thinking about doing one that is kind of like the first one I did, but a little more planned, like specific through how I got into music, passionate about music, and certain bands, and then like some details. Um, with the Black Sabbath stuff, I zeroed right in and got hyper detailed on just that one group. I'd like to still do one on Hawkwind. I have a lot of material at my disposal for that, and I have a lot of uh, knowledge about Hawkwind and experience with their music and their history. So I think I could probably do it justice. Am I going to get back to the Black Sabbath stuff? I am, but I just don't know when. I haven't felt inspired to tackle that um, recently. What else? So I've covered Flicker Street on music, my soul bearing issues, my eBay, some other uh, distractions and digressions. Um, Beyond that, the major thing I have is Blue Review, which I have done a couple recently, and I do have a bunch of titles kind of put aside for possible discussion in upcoming episodes. I'm not sure if those episodes will be upcoming. It could be upcoming tonight or it could be upcoming in a week. I'm not really sure. Um, this video itself, this arbitrary interlude, is kind of a way for me to find my grounding and my footing, get back into the rhythm of doing these. Hopefully not being as nervous as I was on some of the more recent ones, but hopefully as relaxed as I was on some of the better recent ones. Some have surprised me at how good they've turned out, and some have mortified me at how awful they've turned out. I'm keeping them all up. Anyone that I actually post is one I'll stick behind because I do kind of scrutinize them a bit before I post them. Sometimes something will feel 100% right, and I'll just go ahead and slap it up, and then I have to like immediately after it's posted, I have to watch it and make sure. And so far I've been correct. Yeah, I've still liked them. But there have been some I've recorded and then I can't post them. I just they're either too personal or they're just too rambling, too nervous, too something. And I was thinking about discussing in a series another thing that I've been passionate about my whole life, uh, one that I'm not devoted to on a regular basis as far as contemporary collecting, but comics is something that art form that's it was my favorite for many years. Of course, film is now, followed by music. But as a child, it was comics, and comics has stayed with me as an art form that I love, and I still have an enormous amount. I've put an enormous amount of thought into my views on comics and uh, as an art form and various characters, various titles over the years, and also the business of comics. I'm a bit cynical about the contemporary mainstream business of comics. Okay, I'm more than a bit cynical. Um, I'm not happy with the way things shaped up over my as I went into adulthood with Marvel and DC. I realized that they were no longer speaking to me. Um, they're speaking to maybe another generation. It can't just be that though. I think they're really speaking to a lowest common denominator across the board. It's a sensibility I not only don't feel empathy with, I actually feel antipathy toward. Almost resentment, I guess. Like, create your own thing, like independent comic creators. Create your own thing, that's now and modern. There's no need to take these characters that were already defined decades ago and try to stretch and tangle them up and squish them and tie them into a pretzel knot to fit your current narrative agenda, whatever that may be. Um, it's kind of silly. It's kind of embarrassing. I'm not sure who reads these things, and I apologize to some of you guys who might be reading these comics, but uh, they leave me so cold and cynical. It's unbelievable. The spirit of those characters, at least for now, resides in the live action adaptations. And so, in that sense, the Marvel characters, the Marvel universe, what have you, um, is living on, and there is resonance for me within those filmed works. But the actual comic books, to me, are just like really poor advertisements for the movies at best. Um, they are very trendy and try to imitate the looseness and the anarchic spirit of a lot of the hipster comics and alternative and underground comics of the last few decades, but fitting it into this kind of superhero formula. And kind of what it does is it cheapens both. Uh, it cheapens both things. It makes those techniques, which have resulted in some incredible art from Marvel, for instance, and some very modern, contemporary, nice work visually, but the narrative runs counter to it, and so it cheapens the characters and takes away the seriousness or any gravity those characters might have had, in and of themselves. Some can argue that superheroes really have none to begin with, but the ones that are coming out now, the books that are coming out now, they make the films, look like some weighty, heavy art house films by comparison, as far as their narrative choices and just the glib faux irony of them. I can't stand it because it kind of it's like Marvel co-opting the styles of comics that came up parallel to them that were non-mainstream, absorbing those styles and then spitting them back out in the form of caricatures of their own characters that they're also kind of making fun of. And they expect, the readers, I guess, are in on the nudge, nudge, wink, wink of it. But seriously, you try to read a few of these books and just as their own story, it can't work because they're so tied in with this infrastructure, this corporate infrastructure of the Marvel universe, interconnectedness, these event comics. On the other hand, so you can't really enjoy them as their own work. On the other hand, once you dip into that world, then it's just there's a real paucity of ideas. Um, every character is redone as another character. Like every character becomes Venom, or every character takes on Iron Man's armor, or every character becomes gamma irradiated when it comes to Hulk. They all have these silly adjectives, like totally awesome Hulk and superior Spider-Man, and I don't know. This stuff is just it's silly. It's silly, and it's much sillier than the DC kind of fun DC comics that were around prior to the 80s that us Marvel zombies of the time kind of made fun of. But those comics, I think, were sincere in what they were, and you can appreciate them for whatever value, kitsch or whatever have you, that they provided. Uh, these books now they're just silly with no real merit, no real humor. It seems like a very humorless line of comics, um, trying desperately to be funny. It's kind of depressing, actually. So, I would like to talk about comics, but I would mainly be talking about the past and how I got into comics and series I've enjoyed over the years and comic companies I've enjoyed over the years because even though I've name dropped Marvel and DC a lot, my favorite all time line of comics is EC Comics. I don't think they've ever been equaled in terms of craftsmanship at such a high level, both visually and on a literary scale, month after month for 3 or 4 years in multiple books. How this finite amount of artists and writers created that many great stories that look and read that well so quickly and in such a period of time. They weren't being like Jack Kirby, who was just punching them out, and the energy was carrying the art, and the ideas were carrying it. In their case, they were really crafting something of lasting power. And you can tell that not only because of the art, the comic book artists, but also the fine artists that have been influenced by those visual artists, but also the pop culture and genre things that have been influenced by the writing on EC Comics. Twilight Zone without EC Comics. EC kind of ramped up the whole kind of O. Henry ending, twist ending, retribution, karmic retribution angle. It ramped it up to an art form, and it became widely disseminated and insanely imitated for 60 some years now. Gosh, 1950, no, almost 70 years now. That blows my mind. So I will always bow in deference to EC as the summit of comic artistry, comic book artistry. Not that they're the final word, or that even their stories are among my very favorite personal favorites, though some are. Simply the impact of that line and what it was doing, what it was expressing, and with such finesse, and done in a very adult fashion, while still being able to kind of tread the minefield of the mores of the time. But the violence they did take as far as they possibly could. They couldn't take the sex as far as they probably wanted to, but the violence they did, and they became censored for it and attacked, pilloried and crucified by Senator Kefauver and those madmen. But man, what they accomplished. So yeah, I could wax rhapsodic about EC and other comics for quite a while. So we'll do a series on comics eventually. So, and as for my Flickr Street series, I'm working up something for my website that I've mentioned a bunch of times on these videos. And I'm finally one more painful step closer to getting it posted and taking the form I want it. I wrote a lengthy introduction to the piece that I was going to post today. and I'm finishing the edits on that piece and going to transfer it all over to my website. And with this introduction, there are going to be caveats as far as like, this is how this piece evolved. This is how this piece fits in now. What is this piece? What does it represent? And what does it point towards? Because this piece I finished, which for now I call Flicker Street the Birth, which I'm riffing on Twin Peaks The Return, obviously. But The Birth is like a 67,000 word document, story, ongoing kind of saga. That backgrounds gives you the background on this kind of world that I've created. It doesn't, however, figure into the modern day or the current kind of storytelling that I'm doing now, set in the present of that story, that world. But it points in that direction. So what I'm trying to do now is create another document, another piece, a work of similar scope, but one that will probably be easier for me to write now that I've kind of gotten all my historical T's crossed and I's dotted, and know where I stand with the chronology and the heft of the whole work. Now I can say that my great work is kind of, I can do the actual magnum opus thing. I can do the transformative part of the alchemy. And my raw material is this piece that I worked on, which I'm going to post soon, this 67,000 word piece. That's kind of the prima materia, so to speak. And then I'm going to alchemize, so to speak, that work into something greater, something more relatable, something more in tune with how I write my story on an ongoing level, a more personal kind of thing. So, I'm kind of juggling the epic with the personal, and I'm much better at the personal, but I've gotten better at the epic. I've gotten better at the high concept and things. I used to write stories solely built out of character and characterization. It was very hard for me to have like concepts or ideas like that you could hook something onto. Now it's hard for me to stop coming up with those kind of hooks. But I'm at a creative peak as far as what's being generated up here, and I feel like as a conduit or a channel for these energies, I'm peaking. So I'm in tune with that world. So now is the time to share that vibe, bring in other people in on it, an audience, and however small, and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is where it's at. No, this is where it's at. For me, it's where it's at. But yeah, it's just on such a small scale now that I need to go ahead and make the next step and create a more up-to-date, relevant, long-form piece to hang everything on. The one I have that I'm about to post it's like the infrastructure, but it doesn't hint at the beauty of the architecture, and that's what I need to do. So I've been writing drafts as they come to me for this kind of companion piece, and I've even worked out a metafictional kind of in-universe story rationale for The Birth being of such a different tenor and tone as this next piece will be. I haven't decisively named the next piece yet. But anyway, so I've covered just about everything that I usually do here on YouTube and hinted towards some things I want to do going forward. So really just the next thing is to break down the videos into their separate compartments, I guess, so I can be a little more focused and not so rambling. So if you've been able to keep up with all this, the fancy flights of fancy that my brain takes every few seconds, then I thank you, and I respect and admire your tenacity, or your masochism. I'm not sure which one I should be more in awe of, but I thank you either way. Uh, Please subscribe. These videos are going to keep getting better, so it's an investment for you to subscribe. Don't worry, I'm not going to decline in quality. And please, if you enjoy anything about these whatsoever, just put a thumbs up on it. I'm trying to kind of gauge how many people are actually watching these. Not very many, but I do have an idea of who my loyal, faithful watchers are, and I am getting feedback from them periodically on Facebook and on Messenger. I would like to get some feedback here as far as more thumbs ups and more comments of some kind or another. I mean, I'll even tolerate nasty comments. I'll refute them and then delete them probably, but at least I'll know, hey, this person is paying attention, even though they despise what I'm doing, and that's legitimate. Um, so I leave you with that, and I will see you soon in the next video. And thank you, as always, for watching. I appreciate it.